Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Ben Blanquera with Rackspace Technology, a leading provider of hybrid cloud services for firms on the data and AI journey. In 2025, we'll be speaking to CXOs about their AI journey. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Adam Ennamli, Chief Risk Officer at the General Bank of Canada. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Ben. How are you
How
doing?
are you today?
Very good. How about you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. I'm so excited to chat with you. Normally, I talk to CDOs, and you're the first chief risk officer that I'm speaking with. So I'm really excited about this conversation. So
Same
let's
here.
get right into it.
Mhm.
Tell us a little about yourself, your role, and kind of a little bit about your career path.
For sure. As you mentioned, I'm the Chief Risk Officer at General Bank of Canada. I'm part of the senior leadership team, and I have accountability and responsibility for all the trust functions, such as risk management, compliance, fraud, AML, cybersecurity. I also have a role in sustainability through our climate risk practice and through our group efforts to build an ESG risk appetite. By trust, we mean every function that aims to either protect your business value or to increase your attractivity as a business. I converged towards risk management during my career because of how versatile the domain is. I started in operations, shifted to technology, where I learned about business intelligence and business analytics. I led business analysis efforts in digital transformations, and I got more strategic roles in strategy and governance as an advisor to chief information officers, chief executive officers. And I did discover risk management as a discipline in a US bank where I saw how it can be used to enhance and secure strategy. So essentially, risk for me is a growth enabler. It's also the logical twin of strategy, and they go hand in hand, and that can produce really superior results.
Adam, I have never heard of risk seen as a growth enabler. So I'm really interested in how we operationalize sort of that notion. And it sounds as if your background has really led you to be able to do that well, given sort of your breadth of operational and kind of roles. So let's chat a little about your company, what it does, and what is its mission and aspiration.
For sure. General Bank of Canada is a Schedule One bank, meaning that it's the highest regulated level
Mhm.
in our framework. We do deposits and we do lending, and it's also one of the youngest banks in Canada. Doesn't prevent it from being one of the most successful. We're B2B, digital, branchless, and we have two main products. So auto retail loans as well as commercial loans that can be real estate or non-real estate. So we did build the last 20 years on those two products, two
Mhm.
niche products that had very high margins. We looked into super prime space more than anything else.
Yep.
And then we are entering a very exciting phase of our existence because we aim for hypergrowth in the next few years, as well as diversification and trust. So I have been hired to build the trust advantage, where I federate basically all these risk functions, compliance functions into one strong entity that can help the business make the best decisions. And again, um, General Bank of Canada defines itself as a B2B bank, so we won't go mainstream yet. We will work with partners. And when you work with partners, trust is the most important thing because there is a lot of third party risk in the air, a lot of resiliency risk, a lot of risk transfer between the different entities. And uh, by mastering our risk universe,
Mhm.
understanding exactly how it can go wrong, and basically taking the right risks, we're able to enhance that trust that the market provides us, not only the customers, but also the regulators and all the stakeholders around us.
Gotcha. So your bank has taken a different twist on risk, and risk um, is an overview is a umbrella to cover traditional security functions,
Hmm.
traditional
Absolutely.
compliance functions,
Yes,
and then traditional risk functions, and you've created an umbrella to combine those. Is that right?
absolutely. And
It, it, Go ahead.
it's been working really well because It did reduce return to operation times. It did reduce response times to incidents because it's the same team. So we talk to each other. It did centralize a lot of really heavy compliance burden into a centralized, efficient function that is risk-based, meaning that we only tackle the areas where we have a high potential of loss of value or high volatility, if you will.
Gotcha, gotcha. I'm curious, given sort of the overall trust umbrella that you own, how do you look at data? Right? How do you manage data? Because that's a starting for AI. But since we have a CDO audience, there's probably some interest. Like, how do you look at data within all those domains? Because typically they're siloed.
Absolutely, yes. And by the time the data is looked at and understood, the risk has already materialized. We could see that with a lot of events, unfortunately, in the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
Data uh, is our fuel, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
We use it. We're the biggest consumer of data. We use data to build our reporting, to drive the decisions. We use it end to end, and we see it as an asset. It's the biggest asset of the organization. And our role is not only to make it secure, it's also to fuel it and to channel it towards the right functions. So we work hand in hand with our chief data officer because not only a really good data architecture, a really good data infrastructure is going to help us basically produce better risk functions, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also going to help us uh, position data the as the best products that
Okay.
we can provide our partners. Uh, if you are proposing to the partners like good quality data that they can trust, uh, the value will just follow. And throughout my career, I saw the opposite being done, that they basically prioritized the products they produce. They prioritized a lot of other things, hoping that the data will follow. But
Oh,
it's quite the opposite, and that's the story we learned at General Bank of Canada.
God. So I'm curious. When you say you prioritize data as a product, are there any examples of how what are some things you do different that other banks don't do? I'm just curious if you have any examples, Adam.
For sure. So we have a lot of customer data. We have a lot of loan data that we gather,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, the time to value when you have a lot of data is very difficult to reduce when you don't have the right infrastructure.
Okay.
We The difference between us and other banks is that we don't have the same legacy, we don't have the same technical depth, we don't have the same um, complexity from an organizational perspective that basically makes that time to value very difficult to reduce. We have been able by design to overcome all these obstacles and to be able to consume our data and make it available to our partners as soon as possible in a way that can create value for both parts.
I
And
got
this is just the beginning,
you. Mm-hmm.
of course. One other thing that we have been doing differently is work with partners for our models. We do have models, but we do validate them through a strong partner that we trust on a long-term partnership. We have been doing the same for our due diligence. So
Mm-hmm.
we have data from our partners. It's very difficult to digest it from a manual perspective. So we have partnered with a risk tech to be able to process that faster with an AI-centric engine. So all of these things add up in a way that makes our competitive advantage go stronger and stronger.
I see. So you're not burdened by legacy infrastructure. You probably have an infrastructure um, that is designed for sharing, that is designed for security upfront, and you don't have different data stores. You have simple data stores that things can move very quickly through.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, I can see, I can see it, and it sounds as you've got a partner strategy for like your models and different things. So you're just focusing on where the value is created versus some of the technical aspects of things. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want to have like a blanket strategy where we centralize everything, we in-house everything. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen that work in when you have like a critical mass, but with our size, I think it's better to look case by case and privilege things that we can get in-house and things that we can rely on our partners, because at the end of the day, it's an ecosystem strategy more than an entity strategy.
That's a really good point that it's not about me. It's about the ecosystem that I'm part of and how quickly I can mobilize in that ecosystem. For
Exactly. A trust ecosystem too.
that's right. And the fact that you own all the pieces that have to do with the oversight of this is a good ecosystem to work with. So you don't need a single entity to trust. You trust the ecosystem is really
Really.
interesting. Very, very interesting. So I'm curious. So we talked a little bit about data. How has the AI conversation changed in the last several years in your organization?
So I arrived at General Bank of Canada at the same time as the boom of Gen AI, right?
Hmm.
And there are a lot of misconceptions around AI that
Hmm.
still that are still alive, if you will, in our bank and in the industry. One, that Gen AI equals AI. That's not true.
That's
Uh, AI has been around for a long time. We just didn't see it. It's under the hood.
yeah.
Uh, we have some interesting use cases that evolved in the last 2 years. But again, I think what we lacked was an AI strategy, like not a document per se, but like a collective intent to use AI to fuel our competitive advantage. And it went from AI is basically a threat, let's protect ourselves from it, to
Hmm.
now AI is an opportunity, let's embrace it, but with caveats, right? Let's embrace it by managing the risks that come with it. Let's embrace it as a technology amongst other technologies that has a clear spot in our tech estate and a clear role in our business strategy. And I think the conversation went from pockets of people using ChatGPT, thinking it was cheating, to now a collective intent of let's use AI as an engine of growth. And again, I'm not going to say that we're there yet, but
Hmm.
that's the convergence of all the good intents. My role is to help use AI responsibly,
Hmm.
uh, and also use AI efficiently. So we won't go create an AI policy that is like very different from the technology policy. It all rolls up to the technology policy, but AI policy helps manage the particular aspects of AI as a technology.
I see. I see. So you're treating AI as a portion of your portfolio, not, you don't need to create an AI policy. There are conditions for AI you have to do it, that you have to address, but they're within your broader technology umbrella.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because yesterday it was cloud, before that it was internet, today it's
There'll be
AI,
some,
tomorrow it's going to be something else.
there'll be
Yeah,
something else. But the trust doesn't change, right?
totally.
Those are
Yes.
those are just technologies, but how do you create trust doesn't change. I'm curious. You created the term responsible. You said responsible AI, and how do you define that, and what do you do to actually make that happen?
Uh, Three pillars, if you will, and the 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 focus changes real time on the three pillars. The first pillar is uh, you need to rely on AI, but be able to explain how it's used.
Okay.
Uh, AI has been used in the industry, in my opinion, very fast. Sometimes we hard code mediocrity in our models,
Yes, we
and
do.
and I'm trying as much as possible to avoid that. So whenever we want to use AI, we have to do it. We have to take the right time to do it, not too much time, and not like too short time. Like it has to be balanced to be able to explain it, right? The second pillar, if you will, is the secure use
Mhm.
of AI in a way
Yep.
that doesn't lead to us bleeding data
Mhm.
or trust in general.
Yep.
So if we have an incident where someone uploaded data to a mistrusted Gen AI
Mhm.
engine, uh, it will come bite us in the back at some point, right? So it's very important to drive the right behaviors around the safety and the secure usage of data. The third part is the our ability to depend and rely on AI as a technology, but not over rely. And it happens a lot when AI tells you what you want to hear, right? Or what you
Hmm.
expected to hear.
Yeah.
You'll just be happy with the result and move on. You won't question it. You won't oversee it, right? And that's a slippery slope. And I want to drive the right behaviors again here to make sure that whenever we get a result from AI, we're able to to have a critical eye
Hmm.
and to not over question it and be paranoid, but like at the very least test it from our human experience and be able to rely more on it later, but always have that critical eye. So those three pillars are they are they have there is like a very strong relationship between the three of them, but it's all about yes, trust AI, but don't forego your intelligence. Don't
Gotcha.
let go of your intelligence as a human.
I
That's
got
very important.
that is very wise. It's it's a human in the loop. Make sure it's not autopilot. It is something that you have to watch and monitor. I'm curious from a structure perspective, Adam. Like
Yeah.
you've got your office, the risk that has security, compliance, and risk in it. Do you have like in order to and then you have a CDO. I heard you say that. In order
Mhm.
to like, what is the process? Is it centralized in terms of like use cases being identified? Then you have a core team building things. How are you organized around identifying, building, and then running AI solutions?
So thanks to our size, if you were
Mhm.
very lean, we are able to collectively meaning the senior leadership team, look at our portfolio of projects and make
Mhm.
decisions on them in a way that allocates optimally the different resources.
Okay.
Uh, it depends really on the impacts of each use case on the rest of the organization. So, for example, I am working with my team on risk use cases, meaning that the only direct benefits, is going to be our team or
Mhm.
one of the trust functions that I oversee.
Okay.
That is internal, and that doesn't consume a lot of capital. It just consumes the time of my team. So those we're able to manage and then scale as we go, as we're able to go from experiment to industrialization, if you will,
Okay.
at the scale of the bank, right? But like for those use cases that go beyond our department, there needs to be a collective decision making and a collective oversight through steerco project management that basically provide the right governance. We just have been looking at our first proprietary model for adjudication, and it was a collective group, multidisciplinary group that was providing the right oversight for that.
Gotcha. So let me make sure I hear. So you've got a leadership group that views the portfolio and makes sure resources are allocated appropriately. Then it sounds as if the work is within a function itself, you can run autonomously. But if it spans multiple functions, then you've got to have make sure there's a group oversight associated with the project. Is that sort of
Absolutely, yes,
the way you're
and
organized? Okay.
exactly, and to make sure that we don't, duplicate efforts or go down a rabbit hole, because it's happened, especially in bigger organizations. There is a
Yeah.
lot of communication, a lot of show and tell that
Hmm.
is going on between different executives that helps sometimes just associate. Uh, it's happened to me that I told the CTO about something I was working on with my team, and I heard that the CTO was doing the same from an AI perspective, and then we just partnered in order to have like a common prototype that could be scaled.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. You spoke earlier how you're using AI and risk as a competitive advantage. Right?
Right,
I'm just curious, do you have any examples how you've been able to do that? Because I hear it's about speed,
right.
I hear about do you have, like, an example of something that you've
Sure.
been
So
able to
I'll give you the problem that we're trying to solve,
do? Okay,
and what we did through AI to be able to solve it.
okay,
Um, so we define ourselves as a partnership superpower. So we need to work with partners to make our business model thrive.
okay,
The problem when you work with a lot of partners is that you have limited resources and you need to vet every partner to make sure that you can trust them on the long run.
right.
That's called due diligence, as you know.
Yep, yep,
Uh, our due diligence used to take 60 days because there is a lot of things to look at, you know. especially when you are building a very strong partnership that is meant to last for years. It's like an M&A transaction.
Yeah,
You need to
absolutely.
look at like strategy. You need to look at their financials. So it's a lot of documents. It used
Yeah,
to take an average of 60 days to go through everything, and then there will still be errors, right? So uh, during one of the conferences I attend, I met a very interesting risk tech uh, startup in the US that provides AI-centric due diligence. So they basically have an engine that they will train based on our data and essentially put to our disposal. So whenever we have a new partner, we can use that engine to accelerate our due diligence. And we did test it a few times, and we looked at the results. It's been like now a little bit over 10 months.
mhm,
We have 77% efficiencies, meaning that now it takes 14 days to assess a partner. Um, the the errors are down by 30%. I mean, it was just humans. It's normal that there were errors, and we were able to correct them in time. But now we have 30% less errors, and we're able to uh, onboard more partners. So now, on the same time span, we can onboard 20% more partners, and this is just the beginning. So the power of AI is very clear here. Of course, it has to be controlled with a lot of specific constraints around data privacy, around security,
mhm,
around reliance, as mentioned.
sure.
But if you get those controls right, the power is incredible and it can be unleashed further.
Wow. So let me get straight. So due diligence, 60 days, or now is 2 weeks. Is that sort of the
Exactly. That's the average now.
60 days to 15 days? So it's a quarter of the time,
Yeah,
reduced 30%. And in a world that it is speed wins, if you can create the right trusted ecosystem, this is a huge competitive advantage for you.
for sure. Yes. And this is one use case. We're exploring other use cases internally
Mhm.
to take things even further. And again, always responsibly, always with a critical eye towards the results.
That's fantastic. That's a great example. And after this, I'm gonna have to get the name of that organization so I can check it out.
Absolutely.
But I have seen, or there are case studies I've heard where essentially you have, these are deal rooms, right? You're doing acquisition due diligence, and the ability to digest information quicker
Yes,
is a huge competitive advantage.
absolutely. And without overlooking things or making mistakes, because I've at my last gig, I worked for a global technology company that was using M&A as a clear growth lever. And again, uh, the fail fast strategy meant that we look at specific categories of risk before others,
Mhm.
but then sometimes you win at looking at everything at once,
That's
and
right.
AI can allow you to do that.
That's right. I'm going to shift a little bit. Banking is highly regulated. And
Yes,
so I'm just curious, how are you navigating the AI and data regulatory sort of environment? Because it's evolving very quickly.
for sure. We are lucky in Canada because we have principle-based guidelines from our
Mhm.
regulator, meaning that it's subject to interpretation. So it
Okay.
doesn't dictate technology or processes or people, right? It does dictate what you need to uh, basically follow in terms of principle.
Mhm.
So we we are careful. Like we do collaborate with our regulator, and we're very, very transparent with them
Mhm.
to disclose every usage of AI. And whenever there are questions, we will definitely provide with all the controls that we are using to make sure that the usage of this technology of AI is done in accordance with the principle in question, but also in a secure way, in a way that protects all the stakeholders involved, and that doesn't create over reliance or lack of explainability, as I was mentioning before. Um, so that this is for the applicable regulations that we have now. We have regulations for everything. We have regulations for how we allocate our capital, with about how we are resilient, about our cybersecurity, about like our data. So now, at some point, we'll have AI specific regulations, and at some point, we'll have to basically use that as a framework on how we use AI.
Got it.
And I see that as an opportunity. I don't see that as a hurdle, because when you look at DORA or EU acts in Europe, they include very specific guidance
Mhm.
that can be used as a from a by a company as an efficiency tool,
Mhm.
because you do have a very clear outline of how you need to use AI and what to watch out for. So that's how I prepare it. I use the status quo now to make sure that it's optimized, it's transparent with our regulators, and then in the future, whenever there is like a framework coming, I'll use it as an engine of efficiency rather than a hurdle. And because I believe that compliance comes from a good place. Compliance protects us against uh, large events that
Mhm.
can be very disruptive. And by the way, whenever there's like a huge crisis like 2008, you see a whirlwind of new regulation
Mhm.
that is meant to help rather more than anything else. And that's how I invite all the practitioners to look at compliance. We try to make it as simple and painless as possible, but at
Mhm.
the end of the day, we also want to say that it comes from a good place.
Yeah, and just talking to you as this sort of made me reframe in some ways the notion of compliance, which is the notion that if bad things don't happen, then you can move faster. And
Totally,
compliance is it helps bad things from happening in some
totally.
right.
And in compliance, I would say I will just add one thing is that there is always the musts, the needs, and the nice to have.
Hmm.
Uh, I think any compliance practitioner needs to get to that state where they know how to minimally, viably comply with a guideline or a law, and then the rest is just to reinforce, and that's a choice that the enterprise needs to take.
Gotcha, gotcha. Since we have a lot of CDOs as our audience, I'm curious, what advice do you have for a CDO in terms of working with their security and chief risk officer like yourself? What's your advice to them in terms of making that relationship really work well to create value?
You mentioned relationship. I'll just build on that. I think it's very important to build a relationship. We aim to build relationships with the CDO and the CTO and all the business unit leaders across the enterprise, because those relationships help make things faster and
Mhm.
easier later on.
Mhm.
Um, the advice I would have is to build those relationships and have the trust functions around the table as early as possible in their life cycle, because it will embed risk and compliance by design in the product that we're designing or building or the service that we're building. Having a compliance leader or a risk leader around the table just helps get the right questions as early as possible and embed the response in your design. That's all we want. We don't need to stop everything at the
Mhm.
11th hour to do a compliance review. That's the worst
That's the worst thing. That
way.
you don't want that
Exactly.
thing.
But
Yeah.
it still happens, unfortunately. And
Mhm.
I think as CXOs around the table, we can work together to make things happen as early as possible. Because if something is meant to fail, I prefer that it fails very early rather than at the end.
Mhm.
And the goal is not to make things fail, is to make things grow and happen as fast as possible, but safely and
Right.
securely.
Yeah, that's really so. What I heard is trust. Let's make sure we create relationship. But what I also heard, and this is really interesting, as we design products, let's think of trust in all its aspect as what we call as a requirement, and let's build that in early so we don't have these last minute, hey, by the way, let's check, let's we build it in versus inspect it in. And
Exactly.
yeah, so that's really fascinating. Adam, this has been a great conversation. Any other pieces of advice for the CDOs out there regarding risk and AI? How do we make AI work for us?
I say AI is one of the biggest value promises that we have had in the past few years.
Mhm.
So I would say embrace it, but understand it, right? Understand it well, so that you can generate your value without any losses. down the line, right? I think that's the only advice. Embrace it and understand it
Yeah,
the way we do it.
gotcha. And I'm curious, how do you understand AI? What do you do to make sure you understand AI?
I think AI is uh, something that augments us in a
Hmm.
way. If you identify your weaknesses and you're able to use AI as a partner in crime to be able to augment your abilities and your skills, that's the best way to use it. Uh, I think AI is a technology amongst others. I don't want to underestimate it,
Yep.
uh, but it's still a technology. So I invite everybody to still look at it as they looked at cloud or looked at all the other
Just
big
another
changes.
technology.
Exactly. It's a top-notch technology. It does deliver a lot of really good value, but it's still a technology, and that's the essence of my understanding so far.
Gotcha. Adam, thank you so much for your time. Lots of nuggets of wisdom in what you've said. So thank you for your time. Folks, dial in to cdomagazine.tech for more information and to hear more great interviews like this one with Adam. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.